Hello, good morning or good evening whenever you are watching it. But this is our last Friday features. I know I am a little bit sad, but it does also mean that things are starting to get back a little bit to normal. More and more people have been coming in the store, able to take some more time browsing around to find things that they like, and less need for people to be watching things streaming at home. I am Amanda from Blue Highway Games, but this week all of our features are going to have been selected by different employees of the store. Now, I would have loved to have everybody come and Zoom in call and stream that and have them talk about their special game and why they like it. But I have tried to get a little information from them on why they liked it, as well as I have played them all myself, so I do like them and can talk about them, which makes it nice and easy. So unfortunately, it is just me talking about everybody else's staff picks as well as my own. And that means we also have 6 features for you this week. And because it's our last one, we've thrown a few little extras on there that you can learn about if you watch this video and find out what you'll get at 20% off this week in store. I will try to keep an eye on the chat. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Otherwise, if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to call into the store or go in and see if you can find out more information, because I'm sure all these people would love to talk about the games that they picked. So to start things off, I'm going to start out with probably the one that was the least new to you all. They were all supposed to be games that had never been featured on Friday Features throughout the year, but the one that Sophie picked was close, but it was in fact different, and that is the Betrayal at House on the Hill. Now, to be specific, this isn't even the one she picked. We featured the Scooby-Doo one a few months ago, and it's kind of a lighter family version of this game, but she picked the D&D version of this game, but we only had one in store, so I didn't want to open it up, pull out the guts to show you, because then we wouldn't have any one for sale, and I'm not 100% sure we can get any more. That is on sale this week, however. So if you do go into the store, you'll be able to get the D&D one on sale, though you gotta act fast. So if you're watching this and you're like, that's the one I want to have a discount on, call the store and put it on hold, and hopefully you'll get a copy. Otherwise, this one will also be on sale too, because we have more copies of it. So if you miss out on that one, this one is still a lot of fun. So I'm going to talk about the original. The D&D version is in fact different, and centers around the world that D&D has created through their various seasons, or editions, I guess is the right word. So Betrayal House on Hill, if you didn't watch our Scooby-Doo one, is a asymmetrical game, meaning that players are going to be working cooperatively to start out the game, all one team. And what the game is exploring a house. Your little characters are going to start at the door, and they're wonderful little tiny painted miniatures. I don't know if you can see this, but they're really kind of cute. They're really tiny, though. Just tiny. They start out at the beginning of this house. You're all adventurers. You're going to go into the house. Now, the house isn't a board. It's a modular thing made of tiles that get played out as you go. They're face down. You choose one. You pick a place that it goes in an appropriate location. The upper part of the house, the basement, the main part. And you connect it to previously placed tiles that then your little characters can go into those rooms. Some of the tiles will ask you to draw cards, items, omens, and events. So as you draw those cards, things are going to happen. There's quite a bit of text on them. It's definitely a text-heavy game, story-based, lots of flavor, characters. When things happen and you draw cards, you're going to change elements of the games, or things are going to start to happen. And when a certain number of ill omens appear, you're going to have to roll die. If there are enough omen cards and you roll a certain number, you cause the haunting to happen, or the haunt. And then this is where it stops being cooperative and it becomes asymmetrical. If that is you and you cause the haunt, you're going to actually take this book and go into another room. And you've all decided which number you're going to do. There's 50. And then you're going to read the appropriate story elements for that game, which your other players will not know. It will be secret to you on how you personally can win the game. At the same time, in the other room, all the remaining players are going to read the survival guide and the same number, which is their flavor text for that story, kind of creating this certain atmosphere in the game. And they're going to have to try to survive, or they have certain win conditions that they have to meet in order to beat you and your secret little haunting game. So it's very much full of flavors. The D&D version is going to have that D&D flavor to it, just like the Scooby-Doo one was all about finding out it was this disgruntled owner of the factory wearing a ghost costume and operating levers to make it seem like a haunting. But in this one, it's a little more on the classic horror, not Lovecraft entirely, but leaning in that direction with some madness and things like that, but witches and ghouls and ghosts and things that you'd find in a haunted house. So Betrayal at House on the Hill, or Baldur's Gate, which is the D&D one, is going to be on sale this week for 50% off, or 50% off. You heard it here. It's 20% off. But you can just cut and edit that portion of the video and remove that, take it into the store, and if you want to go through that effort, they might give you 50% off. It is 20% off for Betrayal at House on the Hill, both editions, and that was Sobe's pick. All right. The next one I have is a little more traditional strategy game, one that we haven't featured, that I had often tried to find ways to, if I could, fit it into one of our weekly features, because it's one of my favorites, but this is Jeff's pick. Jeff has picked Istanbul, and Istanbul, it came out in 2014, and it has kind of had a evergreen popularity. It wasn't overwhelmingly popular when it released, but it had kind of a steady popularity over the years. Eventually they released a dice version of the game and a big box version of the game. That dice version of the game we do have, and it will also be 20% off, because we might have limited copies of Istanbul, though I think we're going to get more in. But both the dice and the regular are going to be 20% off this week. And let me tell you a little bit about Istanbul. So this one, like the first one, doesn't actually have a board, but it has tiles. But in this one, you're not revealing the tiles. You're kind of choosing which difficulty of game you want to do, and then you lay out the tiles in a 4x4 grid of 16 tiles. So it's quite large, looks like a board, but it is modular, and as you want to spice up your game, that can be even done randomly, but there's 3 set versions of the game that you can set it up in. And then you have a stack of workers. I should have pulled out more from the bag, but you have one main worker and then a bunch that will be stacked underneath your tower, and you start out kind of in a center space of the board. The object of the game is to take your stack and move to different locations here in the Grand Bazaar of Istanbul to try to collect resources that you can exchange, or money that you can exchange for gems. Now the gems are what you need to win the game. There are not really points in the game, but it is in fact a race. So you are trying to be the first person to collect X number of gems. It depends on the number of players in the game, how many you need to collect, but you're trying to spread yourself out in that marketplace, trying to collect resources or money to exchange for gems. What makes this game interesting is that I love it for 2 reasons. One is the movement. Your stack of workers, you can move up to 2 spaces, and when you do, you're going to leave one of those tokens behind in the spot that you just went. And then the next time you have to move to another location, so you move out and you drop another worker. But when you run out of workers, you can no longer take actions. Now you don't just take a turn right then to gather back up your workers. You however, you can return to a space that you've previously activated, and at which point you'll pick back up the worker, reactivating the space. And so you kind of want to create yourself a chain of actions to go out and back in, and then out again and back in. And that, I find, is a very unique feature of the game. There is a way to reset back at the fountain if you find yourself out of luck and you just can't do what actions are there, but that does take a whole turn. And the other reason I love this game is because each of the little tiles is a different action. So it's sort of like little tiny mini games sprinkled throughout, and some are as easy as you get some resources and you get as many as you can possibly hold in your cart. But others of them are ones that you can earn special bonus tiles, and it's sort of a little race there too, because they're a little bit cheaper if you get there earlier and you exchange some of those resources for these bonuses that help you. This one gives you another one of those workers that you can add to your stack, so you can go a little bit further before you have to retract. And then, I don't know if I pulled the tea house out, but there's one where you're gambling. So you actually decide, I'm going to go with the tea house. You pick a number between, I think, 3 and 12, and you roll the die. If you get that number, or you're higher or lower, is how many special resources that you are able to take. So it's a way to try to push your luck. There's also places to go to get those gems. This will be populated with a bunch of gems. I don't have them here, obviously, vertically, but you go there and you spend a certain number of coins. Earlier in the game, it costs less, but as the game goes on, it's going to cost more and more. So with the bonuses that you collect and some cards that you have in your hand and the different spaces that you're going to, you're just racing to fill up your cart with the most gems, the gems that you need for the number of players that you're playing with. The resource collection is neat. You have a little wagon, and you're just kind of keeping track like you would accounting. Like I have 3, and then you spend 2, and you move back to the 1 space, so you don't actually have to take resources. So that's not hard to keep track of, and it's fairly limited on how many resources you can hold in your wagon at any one time. So that is Istanbul from Jeff, and he likes that it's just the feel of being in a marketplace there in Turkey, so it's kind of immersive with the different little actions that you're taking. And it is normally $50, but the dice version will be 20% off through the 29th of April. All right, so that one, tuck away. I also usually choose smaller games when I did my feature because I have a limited work area, but letting everybody else pick games, I feel like they chose the largest box games that they possibly could. Nobody picked a card game, so there's a lot going on around me right now. All right, the next one I say that because I'm about to drop something, I'm sure of it. Knock on wood. All right, the next one I have, this really big box is called Cyclades. And this is from Josh's pick. And it was also my coworker Matt's, one of his favorite games. So I played it back then with Matt. I will admit I haven't played it recently. So I might be a little rusty on the mechanics, but I did enjoy it because it's a auction game, because I love auction games, that also is then kind of a little battle combat game. So there's direct player interaction, which is very different from most auction games. And so it's like combining risk with raw or something. So instead of collecting little things that you get from your bid gives you the army men that you need, or the sailing boats that you need to get to different islands. I do have the board here, although the board itself is huge when on your table because it's modular. It has 3 elements. One which is the kind of the accounting side where the cards and the bidding section is stored, and then the sea area. And the sea area, it changes if you're playing with 2, 3, 4, or 5 players, which is nice because it keeps your little area kind of more controlled. I love it when games do that because then when you're playing with less players, it doesn't feel like empty, wasted space and makes the game too easy. So you have 2 halves of the board that can be fit in different ways, and they have it's gigantic. So they fold out, as well as the side accounting board that's added no matter what number of players that you're playing with. And on here is where you're going to be able to place your bids to try to get the actions. So you see there's no actions there yet because depending on the number of players, you may not have all actions available each turn. 5-player games do, but of course then you're having to beat 5 other people. So each round, these will get kind of shuffled up. The ones that weren't used in previous rounds with those lower player counts are guaranteed to come out. So you're like, I really need ships, and you could shuffle it so that you never get ships, but that has fixed it, so you will always get an opportunity to buy the ships. But they come out, you're going to use some of your cool money gold coins to bid on those places to get the ships that you need to sail around those spaces and the islands, and the armies that you'll need to try to take over other islands. Because, like Istanbul, it's not a point-based game, it's a race game. You are trying to sail, control islands, build buildings, and you have to have one of each of the 4 types, which are from each of those different bid action spaces, in order to then turn it into a metropolis. Metropolises are bigger than the buildings. And they go out and take up more space on the islands. Now you can lose control of a metropolis that you worked very hard to build by somebody coming in and taking over your island, or maybe you were working very hard in just massing an army, and then you can take over somebody's space to try to take over their metropolis. The first person to 2 metropolises wins the game. So you're just racing to either build or take, but you have to protect if you're not taking and building the army. But it is based on how well you're doing in the auctions. If you are bid out in one of those auction spaces, you have to go choose a different location to bid on. You cannot bid on that same one, which I really like, because then if you're like, I really want to go there, you have to try to figure out where you might be outbid again so that you can then return to the original space that you were hoping to bid on. There's a lot to think about. It's a giant board, lots of pieces, but it's not overly complicated once you get going, which is also something I'm a huge fan of, because I don't like things that end up being fiddly. It's more straightforward, though it has lots of depth. There are cards, which are the Greek gods, that sometimes, oh, I dropped it. See, I told you I'd drop things. But this, when you have certain cards, they're sort of one-time use actions, and some of them even have these really fun minis that are going to get to go out on the board while you're doing that action. But they're not like, oh, I earned this one horrible, destructive guy, I get to take over now. It's sort of more one-time actions that you can take in order to have a little bit more change or variability on the actions of the game. So that is Cyclades from Josh, his pick this week, and it is normally $69.95, and it will be 20% off. So that's a good one to get a discount on because it's such a big game. We may have limited supply of that one as well, though we're working on getting some more copies. But just in case, if you really are interested and you want that discount, make sure you call the store and get them to save a copy. And that's your reward for watching this video. All right, the next one I have is my pick. And because it's my pick, I definitely wanted to pull it out and have it on the side camera. So we're going to go over there now to take a look at the Princes of Florence. This is not, oh yeah, I can remember this is always like really close. The Princes of Florence. And this is one of the oldest games in my collection. Not the oldest by any means, but I've had it for a very long time, and the reason I really love this game is because I am terrible at it. So I usually don't do very well, but I always have fun playing it, and I think that's what makes it so great. But what the game is about is every player will have one of these player boards, and it starts out with just this palazzo down here at the bottom. And you are trying to fill up your green spaces with buildings and parks and lakes and forests, so that will then make it kind of nice town, so it's not just dirty industrial, as well as some buildings and specific types of buildings, like a workshop or a chapel or a theater or a tower or a hospital. All the buildings are listed just on the side. That's just reference for you, as well as reference of the turn. But the things that you're collecting go here. Now, this game is almost entirely an auction game. Each round, all players are going to choose an item in turn order that they want auctioned. And then that auction will go forth, and whoever has the highest bid and is willing to pay the most florin for it is going to take that item. So it's going to be maybe a park. You're like, I want to add a park to my town. So you put it up for bid, but maybe you don't win the park. Someone else wins the park. You can no longer auction a park this round. So then you can go again. You say, okay, well, I'd like a lake. So I don't have a lake yet. I want to bid on the lake. And then you win the lake, and then you can add it to your play area. The buildings are not auctioned. So the special park features are these gestures, which are sort of like wilds. They kind of help you in all areas. And then builders, which are going to help you when you're purchasing buildings, making them cheaper. Or at the start of the game, you can't even place them next to each other. So here, they don't really touch. They could touch at a corner. But if I really needed this hospital, I'm going to need to have auctioned and won 2 builders so that I can be able to place this building in that spot so that it's adjacent to other buildings. But if I don't win it in the auction, I'm not going to be able to do that. So it's just down to how much money I'm able to spend or willing to spend to be able to place that building. After the things are auctioned and everybody only gets 1 item, you're then going to have your turns. And when you're taking your turns, you get 2 actions, and some of them you are limited to only 1. So these freedoms, which are religion, opinion, and travel, the freedom to do those things, if you want one, you can just buy it, but it's going to cost you some money, and you can only do 1 per round. The profession cards, which are the meat of the game, I haven't really talked about. That's how you get more of those, and we'll come back to those in a second. And bonuses, which are sort of like the gestures in that they help you, but you don't really know what you're going to get. You sort of draw a few, choose one, put the others underneath the pile, and then you can then also buy those buildings. Now, without builders, they're going to be really expensive. So auctioning and getting one of those helps you, not only makes them adjacent, but it makes them cheaper. If you get all 3, they're even free for you to place, and you can do 1 or 2 per round, reminding you here on the side. Now, the profession, the meat of the game, is how you're going to get work value points and more money. You want to try to play down one of these in every round of the game. However, that's not going to always be possible because the value you need to hit changes each round. So at the start of the game, it's a little bit easier. As it goes on, the people get pickier and pickier. There's more towns that they can live in. You need more specific things to attract this card. So each card has a person. So this is the pharmacist. And the font on this is arguably not very great, but they would like a hospital because they're a pharmacist. They also like parks. They want the freedom of an opinion because they're really opinionated. And then gestures will help, and other people living in that town, so they're attracted if other people have already said, okay, I'll live there, as well as any bonus cards that you might have. So depending on the round, you need to meet a certain number of requirements for this pharmacist to live there. So at the start of the game, it's only 7. So if I manage to bid on a park and get it in that auction phase, as well as spend some money and buy a hospital in that first round, which I didn't because it's up here, but let's pretend I did, instead of the workshop. So I had my hospital down, and I managed to get a park in that first round. I think this is the park, like so. If it looked like that, I would have 4 plus 3, and I would have 7, so I'd be allowed to play this card down. But as the game goes on, it goes all the way up to 17. So by the end of the game, you're going to need to have the hospital, the park, the freedom of opinion, and gestures are going to help you with this card and all future cards, as well as any other people that are living there. So that does help as the game goes on. But once you attract them down, you're going to be able to translate how much work value, how much you attract them by, and then you're going to be able to transfer that from points into money at that time, or just keep the points. So you have to make kind of a decision. Do I want the money, or do I want to get some points out of this? And you probably want a little bit of both. So that is the Princes of Florence. And that has been one of my favorite games for a really long time, so I probably talked overly excited about it. But it is one that has sort of faded from prominence over the last few years, so I'm glad for one last opportunity to talk about it and share my love of it. It's still in my top 5 games of all time, though I think it's been replaced by a few here and there, depending on my mood. All right, I have 2 more because we have 6 this week, so let's get going. The next one is from Sam. Oh, sorry, Princes of Florence. If you want it, it's $39.95. The next one is from my coworker Sam, and she picked a Sheriff of Nottingham. Now, in stock, we have the 2nd edition, which is a different color illustration, as well as different illustrations on the cards. I mention that because I have the original edition, so we didn't want to open up a copy in the store, as I have this version, and it plays the same, although the new edition threw in a little bit of the expansion, so that's an extra bonus that mine does not have. So this is not the image of the cover, but it's the same game, and this one is almost entirely not bidding, but about bluffing. So you are trying to fool whoever is currently playing the Sheriff of Nottingham. So they'll have this little standee in front of them, and all other players are going to fill their bags, and they literally have bags in the game. They do look a little different in the future, but you have bags, and you are going to put things in the bag. The things you're going to put in are cards. Now, you, being a good citizen of the town, you can trade in chickens, you can trade in apples, you can trade in bread and cheese. Here we go. Some bread and some cheese. And all those things would be perfectly legitimate. If you put those in your bag, you say, okay, I've got 3 bread, and I'm going to put these in my bag and zip it up. You don't show people what you're putting in your bag, because you're now going to hand it to the sheriff, and you're going to say, I have 3 bread in this bag. Now, the job of the sheriff is to decide if you're telling the truth. Because if you're telling the truth, they don't want to accuse you of lying, because then they're going to have to pay a penalty. But if you are lying and they let you go past, you might have snuck some very valuable contraband items into your village. So you might have some mead, which they want to tax that alcohol, and pepper, because you should have completely flavorless food. and a crossbow, because you don't want to take over the noble classes. So if you sneak any of those into your bag, you're still going to say things like, I have 3 breads. You always have to say the right number of cards, and you always have to say a legitimate good, but they're going to have to take your word at it. So if I had, instead of putting 3 breads in there, put 2 breads and a crossbow, I would still say, I have 3 breads. And the person playing the sheriff is going to have to figure out if I am in fact telling the truth or lying. Now, if they call me on my bluff, they open that bag and discover I did in fact try to sneak in a crossbow, I'm going to have to pay a penalty of what is appearing on that card. So it's not the end of the world if you get caught, but you certainly don't want to. Now, lastly, you can bribe whoever is the sheriff, and this can get really fun because you could offer them money, you can offer them goods, you can offer them goods in the bag, you can offer them, like, oh, when I get through, I'll give you 2 of my chickens, the 5 that I have, and then so on and so forth. So you can try to bribe them, and they'll say, okay, I'm not going to look in your bag, I think you're lying, and let you go through. And then you pay your bribe, and that's sort of binding. But you do not have to be binding if you promise them something in future rounds. So there's a little bit of backstabbing that can go on. It's definitely, as Sam says, it's a way to have a lot of fun, but still being terrible with your friends. And the art on these are not the same, so it looks definitely different in the future. There's a ton of coins and ton of cards in the box and these little bags, but the bulk of the game is really just in that. Everybody's going to fill up their bag. I'm going to guess on everybody's bag, and then the sheriff standee is going to go to the next player. Once everybody's been the sheriff 2 times, the game ends. Whoever's managed to collect the most sets of the real good items plus the contraband items and the money on there will win the game. So that is normally $39.99. It will be 20% off through this coming Thursday, April 29th. All right, the last game I have is from Scott, the owner of the store, and he has chosen the new game. So I'm glad we got a new game in here. And we do have some copies of this in store, and I think people will be pretty excited because it's the Lost Ruins of Arnac. And this has been incredibly popular over the last few months. A little hard to keep in stock. It's another big box game. And I had a chance to play this for the first time on Monday. Not in person, but on Board Game Arena. So that was kind of fun. At least get a chance to give the game a go without actually someday soon get to play games with people in person once again. It also has a really big board, and the fun of this one is it's actually double-sided. We played the easy version of the game, not the harder version of the game, which is on the back. But what this is you are explorers, and there are some really easy basic actions at the bottom of the board, but then there's spots and places to discover farther up that have some artifacts on them. So the goal of the game is to score the most points in a variety of places on that board, whether it's exploring new sites, collecting artifacts, whether it's moving up the discovery track, trying to get to Arnac and discover that. Really leads to some good points. That is how Scott won the game, by getting all the way up there. But it can be tricky because you have to explore in order to get the resources to move up on that track. And you can also get points just from having lots of cards in your player and items. There's points to be had in multiple locations. It is sort of a deck building game in that you start out with a few cards of your color, and you are going to play them down either for their action or for their movement, which is that little circle in the top. So there's a car, there's a boat, there's some boots, and then there's airplanes, which are the most advanced type of technology and for transportation. And when you have those, then you can take one of your 2 very limited little archaeologists. Have I been saying architects this whole time? Well, if I have, I'm sorry. But you take your archaeologists and you can go discover a site. And in going there, you're going to be able to get some, not discover a site, but just go to some of those basic places on the board, and it lets you get things like the gems, which are nice, really chunky, which I did not appreciate seeing them on the virtual version, or these little artifacts, items, and then like pieces of a tablet, also a very fun plastic piece here. And in collecting those, I guess I shouldn't have put the board over here, you also are going to try to advance on the discovery track with your, see that? It's so cute. Little magnifying glass. Move up on this track. And as you do, you're going to move both a magnifying glass and a book. The book can never go farther than the magnifying glass, so you kind of have to advance them up. But they are going to require those tablets and jewels to be able to move forward, as well as compasses, which are another resource of the game, sort of like also coin, which you have. So in spending those things, you're able to then advance on this board. It does get you some bonuses off to the side. The higher up you go, the more valuable the bonuses and points are going to be at the end of the game. And if you get way high, I guess I can kind of show you maybe, perhaps, but I don't have the pieces. The temple is going to be built above with little pieces of the temple that you are looting you can take home with you. Yeah, don't do that. Do it in a game, but not in real life. Then you have your player board, which is where your deck is going to go. You can also get a couple of assistants. They can also be improved by moving up on that track. Sometimes cards or assistants are going to be separate from the main actions you can do, so you could actually play a card for its immediate kind of non-action action, as well as some of those artifacts that you collect, so you're going to be able to add them to your board to take some extra special actions. So you're trying to find the best way to control your deck of cards, buying more cards to add to your deck to get points, as well as other actions and other transportation movement. So there's a lot of little working pieces, things to figure out. I'm very pleased to see this in real person, in real life. The new sites that you discover are these nice chunky tiles that go onto the board, as well as these really cool guardians that also come out, which are going to give you fear cards. It's sort of the only negative points in the game, although you can still spend them. They sort of take up space in your deck, but they are a boot, which is sort of a very basic form of transportation. And you can also then try to destroy the guardian, and you get a special little action as well. And I didn't know this in the virtual game I played, but when you flip it over, you get 5 points. So if you do in fact defeat the guardians, it is some good points that you can have at the end of the game. So you might be able to do well in the game just by discovering sites and defeating the guardians. So that's the newest game. It's from Scott. He also, I think, has only played it in the virtual version, but he was very excited, and he had picked a different game for today, but he switched to that once we tried it out online. And so it's Lost Ruins of Arnac, and it is normally $59.95, but it will be 20% off this week, which is an excellent deal. All right, I think, did I forget anything? Oh yes, I did. I forgot one thing. Sheriff of Nottingham, we have an old first edition expansion, Merry Men expansion, and if you've been trying to track it down, we will have it 20% off this week, and that is one that we're just trying to clear out of the store, so whoever gets there first, it's the first edition. You don't need it in the second edition, which is the one that you can currently get in store, but we do have the old first edition expansion, so if you've got that box, you can pick up the expansion real cheap. Well, other than that brings us to the end of this episode, as well as all of these little live streaming things. And I know a lot of people have just commented that they see the posts that we do on social media and they come in for those, so I guess I'm not thanking you because you're not watching the video, but we have had a lot of support from the community, people who have watched this video either now or on YouTube or seen the posts and been able to come in. We hoped it was a way to try to bring fresh new ideas and kind of keep it interesting as we've all been stuck at home. So thank you for the support and keeping the store up and going. It looks like we'll have people in store, at least just shopping more. Events are still a ways out, I'm sure. We want to make sure every member of the staff is vaccinated and kind of figure all that out. But eventually, hopefully, in the coming months, I'll be able to see some of you in store, and I might be around a bit more in May. So thank you all for tuning in, and I don't see any questions. I was kind of stalling there, so thank you very much for joining me, and have a wonderful rest of your year.